And we are live. Um, so, Hi everyone. My name is Nishant Shripad. Today we have our and everyone welcome to M365 Filial SPS event. Today we have our first speaker Nicole Enders with us, who will be speaking on become a business application superstar in 5 steps. So first of all, Nicole, thanks for taking out the time and speaking on this event. So the stage is all yours, Nicole. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So welcome to my session. In the next, I think 50 minutes, I will tell you a lot of stuff about model-driven Power Apps. That's my main focus of the session. And I want to tell you that everybody can build a business application because we have so great tools out there offered by Microsoft. First, before I start my session, I want to introduce myself. I'm not sure if you know me. My name is Nicole Enders. I'm working as a team lead for cloud workplace solutions at Conet. That's a company in Germany. So here it's after office time, so it's 7 p.m. here. And Conet, we are well known in the public sector. So we are working for the German government, for example, but we have also private customers, and I'm really happy about this because then we can do the cool stuff with Microsoft 365. And I started my career with SharePoint, and when Office 365 came up, then I was looking what's going on with SharePoint Online, with Yammer, with Teams, and my favorite topic nowadays is the Power Platform, because I think there's so many great tools there. As you can see here on the slide, I'm also an author, but all these books are in German, so please, I'm sorry if you can't read this. If you want to stay in contact with me, then you find me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and I have my own blog too. A few weeks it was a little bit silent there because I was writing a new book, but in the future I will post there more and more stuff about the Power Platform. So that's about me, and then let's start. We see this woman here, and I call her Tanya, and Tanya is working, for example, for an HR department, and she says, we need a business application. So at this moment, maybe she is responsible for the recruiting process, and she sees, okay, there is a lot of stuff which is done manually at this moment, and she wants a business application and talks to somebody, maybe to a software developer, maybe to a service provider. She's looking for a solution. And if Tanya would come to me, I would ask her a few questions. So the first question would be, what about the current business process? So first, before we start thinking about a solution, we should know how the process is working today and how it should work in the future. So if you talk to somebody and he explains you the current business process, then maybe you will get a lot of ideas what you can do. And if you are a software developer, then you have so many ideas what can be done. But please keep this aside and first understand why are the people doing this process steps in this ways. Don't they have a solution at this moment, or are they doing this because of special reasons? Because sometimes there are some laws or some rules you have to keep in mind, and that's why the people are behaving in this way or in the other. So when you understand what's going on with the current business process, then you can ask, should we optimize or change the business process? And this depends. So in some cases, the business process which is used at this moment is the right one, and the woman like Tanya is looking for an IT solution which does exactly the same as her current business process, but maybe with some optimizations. In some other cases, the people already have an IT solution and they are looking for a better one, and they want to change the business process. Do they really want to change the business process? Not in every case. So sometimes the people talk about that they want to change something, but when they do this, it feels different, it feels strange, and maybe it doesn't feel good. So the change can be something which is felt in a bad way, even if it's a good change, but that doesn't matter. So if we talk about building a business solution, the IT solution itself is only one part. So you have to think, on the other hand, about change management, to talk to the people, to explain why this process is changed and what's so good with this business solution. So please keep this in mind, that you need both ways. And the last question I ask is, do we want to support the whole business process with an IT solution? Sometimes, or not sometimes, in nearly every business process, you have some steps which needs to be so flexible, or which are so difficult to define rules, that you should decide, okay, this process step is not supported by an IT solution because we need the flexibility, or we don't know how it's done today or will be done in the future. The main process can be supported by an IT solution, but separate steps will be outside of the system and will be managed in a different way. So if you have answers for all these questions, then in the same time you will have requirements, what has to be done, which are the main criteria to say, okay, we have a good business solution. And the next step is to think about the tools you want to use to build your business solution. And that can be SharePoint. As I said to you in my introduction, I started with SharePoint in my career, and Tanya, we can tell she started at the same time as I, and I told her a lot about SharePoint, and she likes the way that she can create a website, and then she can create some lists inside her website. She's also able to order the fields, to create views, and she can also add some simple validations. And the easiest validation in SharePoint is to set a field to mandatory. Yeah, and then Tanya said, okay, that's all. That's not enough for my business process. I need a little bit more, because maybe she has a lot of fields and her form doesn't look pretty. So she wants to do a little bit more. And a few years ago, what would be the best tool for her? Because she's not a software developer, she's not an IT consultant, she works for the HR department. So she heard, oh, there's something like InfoPass, and she started with the InfoPass Designer, because in the older SharePoint versions, there was a button in the SharePoint lists to create individual forms for her list. And as she had a lot of fields in her list, she said, okay, I create different views. I use it maybe with some modifications to build a workflow, maybe in combination with the SharePoint Designer. And please, if you know InfoPass and the SharePoint Designer, I'm totally aware of that. These are old tools and not used anymore. But Tanya started with this, and she really liked this tool because it was part of the Microsoft Office suite. And for Tanya, it was the tool to create electronic forms. It was so easy. I didn't need to explain her anything. She was able to do this on her own. And only in a few cases, she asked me, okay, Nicole, how can I do this? How can I build an automatism at the end of my workflow? And then I developed something for her. What did she do next? She created a complete different layout, because for her it was important that there's a logo on the top right corner. She implemented different rules, not only mandatory fields, she also implemented validations based on several field values. She defined visibility of an area of special fields or of buttons. So she could create multiple buttons, not only a save and a cancel button, maybe an approval button, and so on. And then she could decide, okay, does this user belong to a special SharePoint group, for example? So is he in a special role? And then this button is available for this person. And she could also send the entered data via email. So that was the easiest way to notify somebody. And Tanya was really proud of herself, because she could build these forms, and she could build a simple workflow. But there was always the point when she said, okay, 80% of my business process is ready, but I need the 100%. How should I do this? And then she had to ask me, or when I'm on vacation, then she called this guy. He is one of my colleagues and also a software developer. And she said to him, "Oh, please, can you help me? I see my goal. I know that it's only a few steps away. Can you build me the rest of my business application?" And then this colleague, he's a hardcore software developer, he says, "Oh yes, Tanya, that's nice that you built this with SharePoint and InfoPath, but these are not really developer tools. So I cannot enhance this for you. I built your solution, but I built it from scratch, and I use your InfoPath form as a prototype and nothing more. So I use HTML, then maybe the installation will be done via PowerShell. I think I will build a web service for you. And did you know that SPFX is the new tool to build web parts? So forget your form. I will build you a really cool solution, state of the art, and you can use it in SharePoint Online and SharePoint on premises. It doesn't matter for you." Yeah, and he's talking and talking, and Tanya, she sees that he is satisfied, that he wants to help her, but does he know what he is doing? And did he understand Tanya? She is not sure. So I think we all know the question on this, the answer on this question. So why don't we proceed this way? In every of these projects, we have the situation that the user who knows the requirements in the best way cannot build the business application on his own. And what should I say? The world has changed. As you see, I'm a Lord of the Rings fan, so please forgive me that I have 2 slides now with a Lord of the Rings pictures. So as Galadriel said, the world has changed. For me, I totally agree, because we are not in the old SharePoint world anymore. Nowadays, we have Microsoft 365, and we have tools like Teams and Yammer for the collaboration part, and we have the Power Platform and mainly Power Apps and Power Automate for business processes. And I will show you how to build a first business solution with a model-driven Power App. I know when you start with Power Apps, then maybe you will do this with a Canvas Power App, and you will see the difference in the live demo. But I think it has totally changed. And if you know Lord of the Rings, you know these little hobbits. They are small people, but they are the real heroes in the story. And at the end, everybody takes a knee. They are standing there, and then they are the tallest people. As you can see, they're not are happy. I'm not sure. So I would say they are surprised about the situation. And I call my hobbits now the citizen developers. So everybody in a department and everybody who's not an IT consultant or software developer can be a citizen developer and build his own app. So you can build your own app. And as I was talking about these tools, if we have a look here on the Office.com's home screen, you see a lot of tools, and the Power Platform tools are also there. Here we see them in a more focused slide. So we have Power Apps and Power Automate, as I said, but we have also Power BI for building dashboards and for business analytics. So if you have a process and you collect a lot of data, then Power BI is your tool to create your reports. And Power Virtual Agents on the right side, that's the newest one in the Power Platform family. So this is a tool to build chatbots. And if you build chatbot with this tool, then you could, for example, start a flow which is created in Power Automate. So you have a way to collect data and then to start a business process in the background. On the button, you see also a few more aspects of the Power Platform. So the 4 tools in the middle are the main one you will see if you log into Office.com or if you work with them. And the 4 at the bottom, you will use them at different ways. So for example, data connectors, that can be a connector to one of the Microsoft 365 apps like Planner or like SharePoint, but that can be also a data connection to one of your business applications, of your legacy systems. So maybe at this moment, this connector doesn't exist, but a software developer can build this for you, or maybe the provider of this application can build this for you, or maybe he offers it already. Portals, that's we will see this in Power Apps. I will not go too deep into detail. I will only show you where you could build such a portal, and that can be used for an extranet scenario. So if you collect data and you have a business process, you can create a portal to provide some of these data to external users, and that will be with an authentication. So maybe you want to offer some data to your customer, he has to log in, then he can see this data, maybe he can edit this, and you don't have to implement 2 solutions, one which is open to the customer side and one which is only available for you internally. The AI Builder, that's a really cool tool. I have also a session about the AI Builder on Sabo events, not on this one, but if you follow me, then you will probably see the session in the future. And AI Builder has a lot of possibilities to do forms processing. Maybe you have service reports in a printed format and you want to digitalize them, then you can do this. If you want to do object detection, so you want to recognize special objects in your pictures, then you can do this with AI Builder, and he also can speech recognition, text recognition. That's a really cool AI tool. And also one of my favorites is the Common Data Service. So that's, I would say, a huge database, and we will talk a little bit more about this in the live demo. So you will have entities there, like you are creating a database with data tables, and then everything is stored there. So maybe think about Tanya as an employee of the HR department. She is responsible for the recruiting process, and her colleague is responsible for employee management. So if everything went good, then one or more of the candidates who apply for a job will become employees in the future. And if you have two business solutions which are independent from each other, then maybe you would collect data in a redundant way. So you would collect data during the application process, and then you would say, okay, I want to employ this this person, and then you would enter data in the employee database. If you are using the Common Data Service, you can collect this data, and they are at a central location, and both applications can use this data. So we will see a few of this central management options in a few seconds. So, and I don't want to talk too much in detail about Microsoft Dynamics 365. It's based on the Power Platform, and it offers different modules. And some of these modules are model-driven Power Apps. So if we talk about model-driven Power Apps now, because it's time for the live demo, then please keep in mind, if you are using Dynamics 365, or if you think about this, then you know what's behind the scenes. So how it's working, and why do you see in the sales module a lot of data as you see them in the marketing module or in another one. So that's a Common Data Service as a base, and then the model-driven Power Apps are on top there. So as I said, let's go to the live demo. And we are here. It's the Power Apps Studio. And I will tell you a little bit what we see here. We are here at the home screen. And as you can see here, we have three options. And the one is a Canvas app. And Canvas app, I would really recommend that if you start with Power Apps, start with a Canvas app, because that's so much easier to start with and to understand how Power Apps is working. So with a Canvas app, you can build a mobile application. When, for example, if you want to have a mobile application, then you only need to install the standard Microsoft app for Power Apps. Then you have to log in with your credentials you would use here, for example, for the browser version. And then you will see all Power Apps which are available for you. And this will be the ones you created and published, but that will be also the Power Apps which are created by somebody else in this environment. So that's here, it's a demo tenant I'm using here. And my environment is called as my tenant, and it's called default. So maybe you could create different environments, for example, for HR, for marketing, whatever. But please think about that you don't create too many environments. So for production, production environment, then you should only have one, for example. So Canvas app, so that means that you can use this in a mobile scenario. Model-driven app, you'll see in a few minutes, that's more focused on the business process and not so much on the layout of these several forms. And a portal, that is the extranet scenario I was talking about. If you scroll down a little bit, you also see from MS Learning here different modules where you can learn a lot of about your options in Power Apps. But let's go here to the next one. And first, here you would find our app when it's created. But let's have a look at data, because I was talking about the common data service and that I think that's a cool tool. And you find here a lot of entities. And you will find a lot of entities by default when you start with Power Apps. So if you think about account or customer address or the currency and maybe also contact, that are entities which are there out of the box, and you can use them in your solutions. So, and what can we see here? We have some entities which have a prefix here in their name. And if you build custom solutions and you need custom entities, then I would prefer or recommend that you go with a prefix. And a prefix is for one publisher. So publisher, that can be one of your service providers, or you create a publisher entry for your company, for example. So I said here, for example, that's for Conet Solutions business applications. So I have a shortcut here. And if I go to application, we see what's inside such an entity. So my entity has a lot of fields which I can use, and a field has a data type, and I can tell if it's required or if it's optional. So that's how I define this. Then if my entity has a relationship, so for an application, I'm here in my recruiting scenario, an application should have a relation to a candidate. So then I could define a relationship here. Do I have some business rules? What are business rules? Business rules are rules, maybe if a field gets a special value, so maybe the candidate requires a high salary, and I say, okay, if the candidate requires a salary with more about 100,000 euros, then I want to start a special process, or I want a special validation in another field, then I can create a business rule. I can also create different views. That's for the list of all applications. So maybe I want to define which fields show up in a view, or if I have a filtered view or whatever. I could also create special forms. So how should I show an application? Maybe when I enter in data for a new application, or if I add an application. As you can see here, this card format. Maybe I want only a pop-up when I'm in the entry of a candidate. I want a pop-up for the application. Then I can go with the card format. Or I want a quick edit form for a bulk edit of many applications. Dashboards and charts, that's where we are going to Power BI, so that's not part of the session today. And if I want to have a look which data is already entered, then I see here a list of all this data. So you see this entity is already in usage. We have 2 entries there, and that's important when we go to our model-driven Power Apps in a few minutes. So that's here for the data tab. You will see a lot of more, but that's not important if you start with model-driven Power Apps. So let's go to solutions. You could also create an app, but I like this way that you have a solution where everything is inside it. So you have all the entities, you have your model-driven Power App. Maybe later you will create a Canvas Power App for a special business process step. So please keep all together here in the solution, and I create a new solution. So I give it a name and I call it. So that's our event, and I say, okay, it should be an e-recruiting services solution. And I keep this because I need this later on the second time. So as you see here, it also provides its name and it removes all the spaces. And here I have to collect the publisher. You can create a new publisher because when you need this new prefix, but I go with CONET because I already prepared everything there and I want to use this. And then you can start or define which version your solution should use. So that's more a software developer part or something which is important for the administrator. But if you create newer versions, then you should increase the version numbers, and there can be a defined rule set if you ask software developers or administrators in your company, when should you increase this number, when this one, and when this or this. So that can be different between company and the other companies. So let's create our solution. And here we are. And I go to my business solution here. And it's empty because we didn't do anything so far. So what should we do next? Could create a lot of stuff here. So we could create a new app, Canvas app, a model-driven app. And here you see that a Canvas app is dedicated for mobile usage. It can be used via your desktop, but it's more for mobile usage. And then you can decide between phone and tablet. For a model-driven app, you don't need to do this because the purpose is to be used on a desktop. You can create dashboards, new entities, you can create a flow, and you have a lot of more options. If I wouldn't have prepared anything for this session, then I would go with the new entity entry. But I've also I have prepared something because otherwise I would run out of time. So I say add existing entity, and then we see the list we saw here in this data tab with all our entities. And as I don't want to scroll too long, I start with application. And you see here this prefix. For this time, I only select the application. We could go with the other ones, but for now it's enough. And I say next. And I want to include all components, not only the metadata of this entity, and include all components. Please, I will show you later in the model-driven Power App what it means that we include here all components. If you forget this, some steps will miss, and you have to do this on your own. So I add the application, and I didn't want to click on new. I want to click here on add existing. I add a second one, and I was talking about the candidates. So I have not a new entity for candidates. I want to use the contact entity because everything I want to add for a new candidate is already defined in this contact entity. So you can store their full name, a first name, a last name. the address, the contact information like email and whatever. So I go with this one. And here the same. I include all components. And I have here my two entities now. So the next step is that I go with new app and model-driven app. And I like this. Sometimes you stay in the same tab. Sometimes you are going with a new tab opened, and in a few cases, a complete new browser window opens. So that takes a longer time as I was expecting. Here we are. And I go here with our new app name. And as you can see here, our publisher, I choose CONET as a publisher. Then we are using the prefix, which is defined for a publisher. And we also lost all spaces here. Then you should add a description, and you should define a title for your app, or I mean an icon here. And then we can say done, because everything else can be defined later. And I only want to show you the desktop version. So what do we see here? It doesn't really look like we are building an app. As I said to you, a model-driven app is focused on the process. So here you don't find an overview about the start screen, for example. So here you are defining which entities belong to my app, which dashboards am I using, and in the sitemap you are defining the navigation of your app. If you start with a Canvas Power App, then the Power App Studio will show you immediately the start screen, and then you can define the different views, and you have to decide if you click on a button, then you navigate to the next screen and so on. So here, in this case, you are building the navigation in a sitemap. You are defining which entities you want. You decide which so-called business process flows you want to use. I will show you after we checked our first version of this flow, and you create the dashboards. So first, let's add a few entities. So our two ones we already have in the solution. And you could have expected that the two entities are already listed here, but they aren't, because in your solution, you could have multiple Power Apps, and maybe you only want to use a subset of these entities. So I go here, I search for application, I add this, and I also add contact. I could also add other entities, but I only would do this when I don't want to change anything with this entity. Because if you integrate an entity here and it's not part of your solution, then if you deploy the solution to another environment, maybe you start in a test environment and then you want to deploy it in a production environment, then maybe this entity doesn't exist in this configuration, and you have a dependency and your Power App wouldn't work. So I would always recommend add all entities into your solution which are needed, and then add them to your Power App. Okay, so we have our two entities here, and as you can see, okay, here you always see all. So all forms, views, charts, and dashboards which belong to the entity application are integrated in our app. You don't need to do this, but for the first time when you start working with this, I would say start with this. That's the easiest one. We cannot test our app so far because we have this warning here. So let's check what's going on with the sitemap. And I have unsaved changes. So changes have not been saved to stay on the page. So click cancel. So then we say save. And then we could start publishing our app, but that wouldn't work because we have this warning here. So I say, let's go to the Sitemap Designer. And that's, we have three levels of our navigation here in the sitemap. And I start with sub area because then we see why we have this warning. And this warning is why, because he doesn't know what he has to show here. And we start with selecting a type. So you could link a dashboard, an entity, or maybe you have some HTML or JavaScript and you want to add this as a web resource. That's an easy way also if you have some developed artifacts and you want to use them. And you could also add an URL, so you could link to an external system if you want. So I want to stay in my environment, so I say entity, and then you also have all the stuff. I think it would be easier if you only see the entities which are here available in your Power App, but you will see all of them. So please take care that you choose the right one. So, and then I said, okay, I want to link to the entity application. You can go with multi-language if you want. So here I could enter the English one, and this one was the idea. That's for me as a software developer, I know that there should be self-explainable and unique IDs here. So use sub area doesn't feel good for me. So I say, okay, that's the navigation, and that's for applications. So then here, this new group that has the same. So the ID doesn't feel good, but also here, this name is not the same, not the right thing. So I think about something like master data, and the new area has the same here. So I say, what's the bird? Where's my mouse? I say here that's configuration, and as you can see here, it enters it in the English wording. I could also go with an icon, so that would be look better in the navigation later on. And I can also add here the new area. I can also say, okay, I don't want to show groups. Groups are the second one. And but for this, I start with this one. I want to add my candidates, the second. So here, go with here, sub area. And I do the same. So entity, contact, and here, as you see, the IDs are becoming a little bit weird. So I will go here with nav contact. So let's say save, and please take care that you publish your sitemap and then you publish your Power App. So you need to publish both so that the other users can access this. So I say publish. So that's great. And then I go back to the app designer. So you have this breadcrumb here. We are in the Sitemap Designer, and I want to go back to the app designer. And you see, okay, we have no warning anymore. So let's save and then publish the Power App. And then we have this play button. So, and here we are. As you can see, we have here configuration, that was our area. We have here our sub area, and the group in the middle, it is displayed here on the left side in the navigation. So on the left navigation, you don't see the area, but you see this here in the breadcrumb. And as you can see the area, then the group is missing. I know it's not the best one, but maybe that changes in the future. And we said, okay, we want to add applications and we want to add contacts. So if I start with contacts, for example, I have a few contacts here, can go with new. And I have here an out-of-the-box form with all the data. So I can add first name, last name. I have a mandatory field here. Can go with some address information. And maybe I want to add a map. That's also possible, but not here as default because map is disabled in my environment. And you will always find a timeline in your entities. So there you can add some notes and you have all the history of your data. And what's always there is that you have an owner of this data. So here per default, that's me. I could change this if I want somebody else. And I use this owner field for responsibility. So who is responsible for special entry? If you are talking about a CRM, then that could be a sales manager or maybe a project manager who is responsible in the several process steps. And here in a recruiting scenario, it could be one of the recruiters who is responsible here for a new candidate, for example. So let's see this form. That looks really easy. So that was a summary. You have so different tabs, and different tabs can be used as we were talking about InfoPath with the different views if you have a lot of fields. And here in this details view, you see we have special tiles. So a tile for personal information, a tile for contact preferences, billing, shipping, and so on. So for a candidate, billing, for example, maybe it doesn't make sense. So we could remove this from our form. But I will show you how we could do this when we talk about the applications. Because if you see applications, we have two entries. So we have two applications at the moment. But how does this application look like? So I click here on an existing one. And wow, it looks a little bit different. So we are here in general, not quality details, and we have not detailed summary or whatever. So I created different tabs here. And so I have here information about the position the person applies for. I have here a link to the candidate. I have also information about the salary, maybe with the business rule. And I have a relationship to other entities. So there are ratings for this application or documents, and I added them as a list. So if we have different entries we want to add here, we have this timeline also here. So different options. But what is really promoted here in this view is this one, and that's our business process flow. So you could design for an entity such a process. And I said, okay, maybe my application starts with a status new. Then I have an initial rating where I check all the documents of this application. Then I'm doing interviews. And after this, I will decide if I want to employ this candidate. So as we can see here, okay, that was really easy. But since 74 days, we are here in the status. And if I click on this, I only see here this status, but you could also add multiple fields which are really important for you in this process step, and you need to fill them before you go to the next stage. So as I would do this, then you see, okay, the decision is made, and that's after 1 hour, 1 minute, and I can finish the whole process if I want. So going back to the app designer, because we have a few minutes left, and I want to show you two things before I go to my last slide. We were here in the business process flow. And if I click on this one, I see all business process flows, so we would see this here too, are active. And there's one I created before our live demo, and it's called e-recruiting application management. And let's go and see what's going on there. In the business process flow, you can start building this with Power Automate, aka Flow. So that's the familiar wording. And then you can decide, okay, which status are in your business process. So I have here new, initial rating, interviews, and decision. You could also add some validations. So maybe you want to check special values, and then you split up if you go to the status or the other one. So you can design your process here. And in each process step, you can collect more data, and this should be fields which are part of your entity. You could also start a workflow, or you could start a real flow in Power Apps. So it's up to you how complex your process is. And here, at this moment, we have an active flow. Please don't forget, if you change something or you build a new business process flow, you will see a button here, activate. And please activate your flow, because otherwise you wouldn't see this. So, and last but not least, here in the application, we have all the forms here. And we have also here, I created a form called application. Now, if I go here, then the Power Apps Studio opens in a new browser window. And it looks a little bit familiar to a Canvas Power App. So at this moment, you are able to design your screen here. You see the process flow, but you wouldn't change this because that is done in Power Automate. And here you can say, okay, I want to add a new field. Or if I go with this, let's zoom in a little bit. If you go with this field job position, then you can say, okay, do I want to hide the label so that only the value is shown? Do I want to change this in a read-only field or whatever? So you have many options there. Okay. This should it be. We go back to the presentation. And so last but not least, I have a checklist for you. And it's not technical, because for me, it's very important. You need to get familiar with the Power Platform, with Power Apps and Power Automate. And you need to be brave. You need to start with building an application. So I have 5 steps for you. The first one is take responsibility. Be a citizen developer. So it's up to you. Think about some business processes you want to improve. What is a small solution to start? And then learn to use the tools of the Power Platform. There are a lot of tutorials out there, and you will find a lot of at MS Learning. So please check the learning paths, look at the different modules. I think you will find a lot of information to start with, and create a quick win solution. Don't take a too huge scenario. Take a small bite and then test if everything is working, and enhance this quick win solution later and later. So start in a small way, and then think about the bigger solution. inspire your colleagues. I know if you are working on the stuff on your own and you are the single person, then it can be boring in some situations when you don't find a solution. But if you inspire your colleagues, then you can find a solution together, because together we achieve so much more when we are working in a team. And last but not least, as I'm doing this today, share your knowledge and talk about what you are doing. If you're thinking about all the events out there, everybody starts learning something new. And please share your knowledge, tell the others on Twitter or on a blog or on user groups what you learned, and you will always find a person who will be happy that you share this knowledge. Yeah, and I think I have finished all what I want to tell. So here at this moment, before we talk about your questions, I want to thank the sponsors, because without them, such an event wouldn't be possible. And if you like, I would be happy if you would give me feedback. What can I improve? Or did I miss some topics you want to hear about? Because then I can add this in my blog. And even for the event, we would be happy to get feedback. Is everything organized in a good way, or do you have some ideas what we can do next? So, do we have some questions?
Thanks, Nicole. That was a great session. So we don't see any questions in the Q&A section for now. So I think everything is very clear.
Okay, then here's my contact information. If you do have any questions later on, then you find me here on Twitter and LinkedIn. Please, I always love to get in contact with new persons. So please connect with me or follow me on my blog, and then I hope I can answer all of your questions which come up in the future.
Sure. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.